don't believe we have any oral communications. At least, did you get any?
No speaker cards.
I'm not surprised. We did have a deletion on the agenda tonight. So it's item number 3 that is being taken off the agenda. So we will hopefully have a chance to catch up on that next month. Any other additions or changes or requests? Okay. So I think we'll begin then with the approval of the minutes. And we have actually 2 sets. The first is the meeting in January 16th. Did anybody have any comments, additions, changes, corrections? I know I read them through and I did not, but I'm not sure. I will give everybody a minute to remind themselves from their notes. I think we're good. So if there might be a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. No opposed, because I heard 5 ayes, so there you go. And then the second set of minutes is from our special meeting that we had on February 5th. And seeing as I actually called that meeting to order, I noticed that it wasn't 1:02, it was 12:02. So that was just a little teeny typo. Otherwise, we had an 8-minute meeting, which I know we actually had probably an hour and 8-minute meeting. So there you go. So that was my only change short of that. I think we can approve with that minor correction. So I would make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Oh. I was ready for that.
All in favor? Yep. All in favor of approving? Aye. Any opposed? I think not, since all 5 approved. So there we go. Woo! We're trying to get through to our speaker as quickly as we can, but we've just got 1 or 2 other things. Okay, good. All right, great. So Elise, our public art program manager.
Okay, great. So on the financial report, if you look at the CIP budget, there are a couple of just very minor changes. If you go down to the 3rd section, which is PAC approved future projects, the final stipend has been reduced to $700. So there were funds set aside for 2 other stipends, and those artists didn't make proposals. So that's $1,400 that just goes back into the kitty. And then we did move the multimedia artwork to pending future project estimates to be more in keeping with the way we do with the maintenance budget as well. So those are the only changes on the CIP. Are there any questions on the CIP budget? Okay. The maintenance budget, there's more to report on there. So if you go at the bottom, we do have some new estimates for the Foundation for Skyhook and the base for Universal Woman, which may shift a little bit because we're still gathering information there. There are 2 items up above in actuals that I do want to call to your attention. There's a line item for Aurora maintenance in the amount of $3,000, and I'll get into, in the staff comments, talk a little bit about the upgrades and what all has happened with Aurora and its new and improved status. Clearly, if there were any additional funds requested over that $3,000 threshold, it would need to come back to the commission for approval. But the other item that I really wanted to bring to your attention is the Cal Lab structural maintenance for the fountain of $8,000. As many of you all know, when the fountain was originally approved, it was scheduled to go into its original footprint there at the edge of the island. We knew that waiting for the construction to integrate it better into the island would definitely cost more, and the estimates for that cost overrun were about $15,000. Now, staff was able to work with other departments to source funds to bridge that delta of $15,000. However, the estimates that came in were far more than that. And so I met with CSD and transportation, and rather than looking to the Public Art Commission to fulfill all of those additional costs, some of our partners are willing to jump in. And that is an item that is going back to council on the consent agenda on Monday. And so they requested an answer from me as to whether the Public Art Commission could come up with $8,000 to support that infrastructure, and they needed that answer before our next commission meeting. So I do apologize. This is something that would normally come before the commission, before that amount of funds are allocated from the maintenance fund, but they needed an answer before we were meeting. So again, I'm sorry, it's a very unusual situation. But that's what it is, and I wanted to bring it up and let you know.
So what do we have now as a balance in the maintenance?
It's on here.
It's
You
right
see it?
here, $9,783.
Okay.
And do we have any projected items that you're foreseeing that would be used toward in the coming months?
The items below under pending project estimates, those are the next things coming up. So the foundation for Skyhook, the crane for Skyhook, and the base for the placement of Universal Woman.
So well within that, yeah.
Right, so we do have enough to cover the projects, the other projects we know we want to cover this year, as well as anything that may crop up. So I feel good about where we are with the budget, and as you recall, this is general fund budget, so at the end of the fiscal year, whatever is remaining disappears, so it doesn't roll back over.
If the collection appraisal piece, which we don't have an estimate for yet, hasn't started, are we,
Yeah.
if we've, I know on other types of projects, if you find the resource for it, you can allocate funds if it's connected with a specific vendor, or would that be the same here? Like if there were funds in our maintenance budget that we want to earmark for collection appraisal?
You'd have to be under contract to officially
And
encumber those funds, to hold them to roll over.
Okay. I do have one other thing regarding budget. I know we talked about it last time, and it was noted in our minutes, but it didn't happen on our other budget, which is the $25,000 allocation for City Hall lobby is still in here as a future project estimate.
Right, so previously it was listed a little higher up as an FY15 promised allocation or something like that. So we created the pending future project estimates, which is in keeping with how we've always done it on the maintenance budget. So it's listed there as a reminder of upcoming requests that will be happening. So it's a way to keep track of what's on the horizon.
I just don't understand how it can be on the horizon if we didn't vote for it to happen.
Yeah, it's listed under approved.
So, and it has allocation, but the budget was never approved.
Right, this is pending future project estimates, in the same way that on the maintenance budget, none of those, the collection appraisal hasn't been approved, none of these things are actually under contract or happened. So these are things as we project out that we think are coming up.
So, and just to bring some clarity, I looked back because I remember I had checked this before. Elise had it in as 25,000 to be allocated in 2014, and I think that was what you had taken issue with, was it was already kind of it sounded very firm, and we had all determined that it wasn't a commitment, but rather I think the way the staff recommendation was is they would like to see it. And so the way that Elise put it here was in keeping with the other one, so that it would be kind of still there, but not necessarily a promise. It's a kind of a reminder.
I like okay, so that makes more sense to me. The concept of having that category is a nice one because it allows us to look forward. I'm wondering, why we don't have other projects listed there, or is this specific to that this project it was one initiated from the public art program, and therefore it is, as opposed to projects that say come to us from other departments or people from the community or concepts from, you know what I mean? Like this, does it fall into a special bucket because of where it's being generated from? versus other projects?
I mean, maybe Elise, you could answer that, but I wouldn't think so. I think we could add to it and see it as future, kind of pending going forward. I think this is sort of a new category. Would you agree? I'm sorry. Did you?
Yeah. But I also think that it could be misleading. It could be misleading to the point that, this is, at the time, somebody brings it up and they think that it's already, because I was assuming too that, I was wondering whether or not we had approved it or not from the way it's written up. So maybe it's terminology. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like you reach a foregone assumption about City Hall lobby fiscal year 15 allocation.
Yeah.
Reads to me like it's been allocated. So either we add to every single one here, whether it's been approved or not, whether it's seeking PAC approval or not, or like the word allocation, like there's no ambiguity about it. It's and these are public documents for anyone to have. So I just feel like it ties the hands somewhat for future commissions, because it's like it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, and then it's like, oh, you're not going to approve it, but it's on
Everything thus far in our budget is always something that's been committed, or that we're either in the process of spending, but like we've never had anything on our budget ever before that has been things that we're hoping for next year. So if we were to start doing that, I think we need to do it across the board, like coming out of a planning meeting with what are kind of estimates with all of the projects that are being thought about right now. Cal Ave tunnel projects, which there's this, or like to handle it uniformly across.
Right, so some of those are on here, and I know we have a line item later to discuss the budget, but for instance, like the artists reaching communities, that's listed on there, and it's not an initiated project.
Exactly.
Right,
So
it was
maybe
a
But that was voted on.
Right.
And
So that's
approved.
why
Right.
it's in a different category than, say, the pending future project estimates, because
So,
they're pending.
but I guess I feel more comfortable when we table a project because we didn't vote on it or had some discussion around it, and immediately for new people, they don't realize what the discussion was or why we decided to table it. So it's still misleading. So maybe, like I said, maybe we should think of a category. The terminology is probably, not to be
Okay.
wordsmiths here, but a category that clearly maybe speaks to the needs of a special situation. Because I don't think all of these projects would be special situations. The ones that we vote on are not special situations, so they could automatically be listed. But that was a particular situation that came up, and we didn't know whether we had the money or not going to have the money, so we didn't want to make a commitment to that amount of money, is what I recall. And even now, I can't recall the discussion of why we table it, but it's worth not putting it in, using the word allocation with it, because
Okay,
it
well,
looks
we'll
like it's a
continue
done
to work
deal.
on it.
Okay, that sounds good to me. It just depends. I understand what your point was too, Larissa, and maybe we should create a category.
Right.
But this particular one fell into the special category, I think. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that something like this may not come up again. But again, we could call it special.
Sounds good.
I don't know, Ben, did you think it was allocated from the way it was read? You're a new commissioner, you're hearing it for the first
I
time.
didn't think it was allocated because I knew about the discussion, but I agree that allocation is, that word doesn't need to be there.
It could be request,
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
that's
something.
pending
Yeah.
request, or
Exactly.
pending approval.
For discussion in FY15 or.
Exactly, future.
And I think it's a good idea to put
Have see
things that are coming
projected.
down, so we know what's coming down the road, and we can see, and if we have enough funds, and we may not, and
Right.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a really, really quick one here is, the thing that's confusing to me, I appreciate the conversation about allocation, the thing that's confusing to me is that it's in two different places. The multimedia artwork City Hall lobby is in two different places. It's under both PAC approved future projects, and it's under,
And
Right, because there was $25,000 approved from this fiscal year, and there was discussion about allocating $25,000
that-
in the next fiscal year for it.
so the first 25,000 was allocated.
Allocated,
Yes.
that's
Okay,
correct.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that makes it even more confusing now that you said that, because someone would read that as, well, 25 was already I would read it in more than one way, but one particular one that jumped out immediately when you said that is that since you allocated the 25, that we were allocating the next 25, automatically it would be allocated in 2015, which is not what we intended to say. But,
Okay,
good point.
so as Elise mentioned, we will come back because Vice Chair and I had a conversation about the budget we want to talk about in another part of the agenda. So first, we'll have Elise kind of give an overview on where we are with the public art program for the city.
Okay, great. So under staff comments, pretty brief this evening. So I did mention previously the upgrades to Aurora, to our lit tree in the front of City Hall. There were a few issues with the Aurora sculpture that have been addressed in the last week. There were a number of branches that were no longer functioning properly. They were all replaced last week and are functioning currently. The interactive portion was intermittently acting up and only worked with iPhones. So Charles Gattican has implemented a new interactive site that works with all mobile devices. Here are the new instructions, which I didn't have a chance to check if the signage has been replaced, but there is new temporary signage with new instructions on it. So if someone's standing adjacent to the tree, if they've used the old controls, you need to forget the Aurora Palo Alto Wi-Fi hotspot. Instead, open your browser and type in control.aurorapaloalto.com. Say yes to location services and scroll down to the green button. Push it and all the controls should work. So I also would like to know that
Did everybody get that?
we'll go check it out after the meeting. But staff has continued to get quite a few positive emails, and just on a personal note, when I'm downtown having dinner or something, I've noticed quite a few people out playing with the tree and lots of groups posing in front of the tree. So that's been really fun. And the other thing that happened since we met last was Thursday, January 30th, there was a presentation on the Day of Giving, sponsored by the Community Services Department. So May 6, 2014 will be the Day of Giving. It's an incredible fundraising opportunity for the region's first Day of Giving. This region's first online Day of Giving will benefit every nonprofit organization that wishes to participate while inspiring and uniting our local community to support philanthropic causes. On Tuesday, May 6th, this 24-hour online fundraising effort will raise millions of dollars for thousands of nonprofits. For more information, go to svgives.org. And that's it for the comments this evening.
Okay, thank you. So I think now it's time for our special presentation, and I will have Vice Chair Miyagi introduce your colleague who you know from San Jose, right?
This is my fellow Arts Commissioner, Tina Morrow, from...
Welcome, Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
and she's going to give a presentation on the art boxes, which I believe is here in Palo Alto. And I know there's one down on University Avenue, just before you get to the train station. There's a little one that's standing. This one I notice all the time. And the other presentation is going to be about downtown doors, which the San Jose Downtown Association sponsors, and which I think is a great project. So Tina's intimately familiar with both of those. In fact, she does the art boxes, and then she works on the downtown doors. So she'll give a presentation, and I think these are two really worthwhile projects that beautify the downtown area.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so, oh, this is interesting. Why does it do this?
I had trouble earlier.
Yeah.
Can you find it?
Yeah, I found it. Okay. So I'm just gonna pull these up, so maybe we'll turn
No, not yet. Yeah, it's gone.
Or we can have Tina sit maybe, and then,
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, I can stand up. I mean.
well, we are supposed to try to
It's
get
the
you
point of
recorded.
The microphone, usually there is a handheld mic, and we don't know what
Even
has
if I project really loud?
come of it.
Yeah.
I'm projecting, not yelling.
Unfortunately.
I'm not sure if that'll pick you up.
Okay, so what would you like me to do?
Is there a,
Let me run to the booth and see.
Elise, is there a remote that we have for yours or not? I don't think so. Okay.
No,
And maybe we'll,
I can do the button if she wants to. I can talk about it. Do the slides if she wants to sit and present.
oh, well, that would actually probably work. I could
Okay.
equally do that.
That would work.
Why don't we do that?
Okay, that's fine.
Are you comfortable with that, Tina?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry to,
I'm used to presenting standing.
I know.
It's all good.
So see this microphone here, and then that way you can be,
Okay, so thank you, Ben. So my name is Tina Morrill, and interestingly, I was born and raised in Palo Alto, so it's kind of cool to, to be here. And I've really enjoyed, seeing the different art in Palo Alto, and I am an arts commissioner, like Ben was saying. So I'm also a Downtown Foundation trustee, and our project is the Downtown Doors, so I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to switch hats and talk about the Art Box project, because I am the founder of that and the managing director for the project, which was approved but not run by the city of San Jose. So the Downtown Foundation, let's talk about the doors. Let me ask you first, has anybody heard of the Downtown Doors project or seen? Yes? Yes. Anyone else? Okay, you guys got to come down to downtown San Jose and see it. Okay, so next, please. So here we have information about the foundation. So no presentation would be complete without a mission statement. So basically, we are trying to promote cultural awareness and civic participation, and that both covers San Jose and Santa Clara County. We want to support the programs that are focused on encouraging cultural diversity. We have a lot of a lot of hands in the pie of public art exhibits and the youth-oriented programs, and then we have a celebration, which I think would fall under the auspices of public events. The foundation is the charitable arm of the Downtown Association. So there's the Downtown Association, and then there's the foundation. We're the 501c3. And we're all a volunteer board. We are a giving board. Go ahead and the next one. So we have 8 folks here. And we have a new person who's not on there, but he's coming on board. We are always looking for, fresh blood, fresh talent. And then we have a staff person who helps us out, Blage Zalalic. She was going to be here today, but unfortunately couldn't be here. When were you founded? It was in 1995, but the actual Doors program started in 2003. And I'm newer to this, so I wasn't around when it first started. But the foundation's primary focus has been the Doors project, and we are starting to expand. Basically, what this allows is both the youth of San Jose, but then also other areas. We reach out to different schools, and it allows them to help shape the urban environment of the downtown core. So we are focused in the downtown core. And what we do is we outreach to students in Santa Clara County in the different schools, and offer to have them participate in this program by submitting entries. And we collaborate, we get sponsorship with the different businesses in the downtown, and then also in exchange for that they get publicity and recognition on the door. And as far as the door is concerned, if you think about the pedestrian experience or even, real slow traffic through the downtown, you get to see, instead of these ugly utility doors or boxes now, you get to see this surprise art. Oh, what's that? Why are there sunflowers right by the Fairmont, which happens to be my favorite? But anyway, so it's a surprise benefit. It makes people stop and say, hey, wow, what's this? And then we celebrate. So every year we celebrate the artists, the sponsors, the art itself, and we invite anybody and everybody who would like to attend. And it's a really cool time because these kids get so excited. They drag their, every relative they ever, had anything to do with, they all come. And they are publicly recognized. They're given an honorarium. We have little corkboard displays of their work, maps, and so they get very excited about it. So that's the annual reception. Next, please. And so today we have about 19 participating schools, depending on who wants to participate. The host sites, so people who are willing to have the artwork on their doors, has grown to 80. When I talk about submissions, what that means is we have kids submitting their artwork for consideration, and we've grown that to over 1,100, which is cool. The entries per year of the schools has grown, so this is definitely, it's catching on, and people are excited about it. In fact, we've had to limit the submissions, which is unfortunate. And then we started expanding it, saying, oh, maybe we should showcase it in the form of posters and note cards. So the celebration that I spoke about earlier, for the past 2 years, we've held it in the museum, the San Jose Museum of Art, and they have a little gift shop. So imagine how cool it is for parents and supporters to be able to go into the gift shop and buy, little, Sally's artwork. It's really awesome. We did expand to include the utility boxes in the core, so how that happens, it's different than the program I'm going to talk about when I wear the other hat, and that is it's kids art, and it's superimposed on vinyl just like the doors, and then it's wrapped on the utility box. And then we give back. So what we do is we are very much aware that unfortunately there's not a lot of art programs now in schools, or they're not well funded. So we take part of our proceeds and we give back to art programs. And then, like I said earlier, each student gets an honorarium. So they get some very cool things, like Adobe usually gives their, Adobe. Yes, that that I don't use, but you know about it. Okay, that's good. And they get really excited about that, and then a small gift of cash. Yeah, it's a nice prize. So and that's something that a lot of grant makers really like, is the fact that we're giving back. So that's a good thing. Next, please. So we have a map of the downtown doors. If you squint, you can see it. The green oval in the middle, that is the Plaza de Cesar Chavez, and so from there you can see, it kind of grows out from there. All the little red dots are where we have doors, and then we have images of
buttons on that side. If you want a laser pointer.
Okay. So yeah, but I mean So here's the doors, and here's the map. And we do have, you can download it. So if you go to the website, sjdowntown.com, and click on Foundation, then you can download the map. sjdowntown.com, and then it's SJDF, I believe, or it might say the San Jose Downtown Foundation. It's one of those things where I know it so well, I don't pay any attention how to get there. Yeah. And next, please. So let's talk about with the kids. What happens with the kids? So we do a survey when we have the celebration. So we hand them a survey, the kids, and also the teachers. And this is what the results of what the kids are saying. So on a scale of 1 to 5, you can see that we're getting pretty high marks for this program. I was especially happy about having more pride in my work, not being afraid to show my work publicly, because sometimes artists have that fear, and having more confidence, of course, is really good. So this is what kids are saying. Next, please. And then the teachers, they appreciate the instilling the pride and confidence in the kids. Go ahead, and next one. And so then this is just a mashup of all of the doors. Yeah, here's my sunflowers right here. But as you can see, I mean, there's so many different styles and varieties, and it's just awesome. There is a little store in downtown San Jose called Discover San Jose, and we sell our note cards there as well as in the museum. So of the doors. So, and that's it for that. What questions can I answer? Yes.
I was wondering about. Sorry that I'm not familiar with the program.
No,
Are there just so many doors that the art a work stays up in perpetuity and you can just continue to run this, or is there a time limit on the amount of time?
Yeah, so with wear and tear, of course, sometimes we have to look at replacing the doors, and that's actually just another opportunity for new art. We had targeted about every couple of years, but actually the art it stays nicer longer than 2 years, and so if we can find more doors to display more art versus replacing it, we'll do that. But we do, it's one of those things where if it is getting worn or getting tagged or anything like that, we take it down, or if we can fix it, we do.
Okay.
So it's not in perpetuity.
Okay, so you can't come back with your grandkids.
Well, no, but it's online. It's online, you know. So, yeah. Pardon? We do have a poster. So we celebrated our 10 years last June, and so we have a poster that you can purchase. That's also online, or at the Discover San Jose store, or at the, and we're actually trying to get into the airport too. So.
And do you want to talk just briefly about the selection process? I mean, I understand that 1 to 19 schools are participating.
Sure. But
then, like, once the kids do submit, who are they submitting to, and on what criteria, and how is that decided?
Sure. So what happens is the schools are invited to participate. So trustees will go down there. A couple of trustees talk to the kids about the program, and the teachers will talk to the kids about the program. And then anybody who's interested can submit their work, and then we choose a panel of interested, people who are generally in the arts. So, for example, Arts Commissioner Rick Holden, our previous art director Barbara Goldstein. Those are a couple of people who have been, chosen to, basically all of the work is laid out, and then they choose what they think is what they would like to see, what the best. And we have expanded it from high school to, we invited one middle school, and it was very interesting because in the selection process they couldn't tell which one was the middle school and which one was the high school. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so, and it has to meet, certain criteria. It has to be community friendly. It's very similar to the, what I also do with the utility boxes. So community friendly, no political or religious messaging, no numbers, signs, symbols, things like that. Yeah, yeah.
No numbers or symbols. Why is that? Out of curiosity.
Well, the symbology is, I guess it can be kind of subtle because I have seen some symbols. The numbers, there's issues with gangs, so we've got some folks who are wanting to put, their things that other people will read, and they'll be able to tell, oh, this is gang related or whatever. So yeah.
And since I happen to have my computer here, the address is sjdowntown.com / let me go back here because I clicked another /downtown_doors.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay. Other questions?
Talk
Yes.
a little bit about the materials. You mentioned vinyl. So it's like the bus wrap vinyl, and that gets stuck to the doors, or
So I don't know the actual material itself, but we work with an outside vendor who superimposes the artwork on this. They call it vinyl, and I want to say it's like poly something or another. I'm not really involved in that, so yeah. But you can wrap it.
Peel it off,
People sometimes do peel it off, yeah. But it not a lot. I saw a couple peels, but
so
not too bad.
So the artist submitted digitally then? Is that how
Yes, they can
so
submit it digitally. Yes, yeah.
I actually think I photographed some of those.
Oh, okay.
I'll admit that. So yeah, they're very well done, and they're very unusual. Different.
Yeah. Yeah, and
did not, and you do have information about them nearby. And for some reason, though, seeing you give the presentation and talking about the high school kids, some of those are very professional looking.
oh, absolutely.
They look like
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that I had thought of doing, and I suggested it to the foundation trustees, is let's expand the program and do something called Ring My Bell. So now we're looking into having a little doorbell fabricated where you can press it, and then an audio recording of the artist's voice will talk about their art, so that it becomes more interactive. Because as you probably know, interactivity with art is really very, very, it's getting more and more important, instead of just standing and staring at something, right? So, other questions or comments? Yeah.
I have one, sorry, but I always think of things in terms of reuse or recyclability and stuff. And I know vinyl has the wearability to it, but is there anything that has come up that you could use that has some durability but isn't as environmentally unfriendly as vinyl?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Yeah.
I don't know such a thing exists, I just thought I'd ask
Yeah.
you about it.
Painting otherwise, yes.
Yeah.
Then it has to be retouched eventually too.
Yeah.
Maybe the people who own the building don't want the doors painted on or.
Yeah, sometimes it's a hard sell just to get the vinyl on there. Yeah, so.
And is it just limited to the medium of painting? I mean, can a photograph be?
No, we have photographs as well. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
And the types of properties that the door, is it all types, government, not private sector?
A lot of private sector, some government. We've got some up in City Hall doors. Yeah. So, but the board is expected to, outreach and bring in sponsorships. So, I ask anybody and everybody, so yeah. So are we ready to move on to the next? No, Ben, sorry, no.
And I'm very biased, but I think this is a great project, and it really helps the students with their art. And how cool is it to be able to brag about that and say, hey, I got this down, you got to go down and see it, or bring your friends and your family down there to see it. I think that is the best thing. And as that survey showed, it just builds the confidence of these kids. Yeah. And if we get one kid interested in the arts because of something like this, it's well worth the project. So I just think, and when I'm downtown and I pass a door and I got to stop and I got to look at it because it's something, it's almost serendipitous that you find something like that when you're walking downtown when you don't expect it. So and it just enlivens downtown. I think it's just a great project, and like I said, it's twofold for the kids as well. You get such great interaction with that.
And then that point, it really underscores for me how, whether it's doors or something else like this, I think that we could use here a venue where already the space and format is set up that people then apply to join. We've had youth in our community come forth to our meetings to propose projects, some of which have gone through and others haven't, sometimes due to logistics or other kinds of constraints about site. So there's no shortage of people who would want to participate. I think that it's the hurdle, if the fact that right now they have to figure out a location and go and propose it to the city and really be motivated to do that. Whereas, having a program where you've done all that work and give them the opportunity, I think would be really well received here.
I just wanted to add that I also think that it's like it's walking the talk. So we talk to our kids about, creative self-expression is the holy grail. Like, who are you, and what do you want to say, and here's the community values what that is. So I think that there's just kind of a civic, it's like a community values piece to it as well. It's just involving kids in public art.
Right. Well, and I don't know how anybody else feels, but a lot of times when I walk around cities, I see gray. I see gray streets. I see gray utility doors. I see gray. And I'm like, oh, we've got to have some color. And this really does that. And it's one thing that does it. There's myriad things that can be doing it, but this is one, and I really like it. So, thank you. So I'll move on to the next presentation.
So is it a separate one?
Yes, it's a separate one, and it should be up already. So maybe if we exit out of.
Just close this one.
Aha!
on time?
We are doing just great. Yes. We allocated, I think, 30 minutes, and you've only used half of your time, so there you go.
So, so now I'll put on my hat for the Art Box Project SJ. And so basically, the premise of this is beautifying San Jose neighborhoods. And we do that by bringing community together with artists. And this shows an artist at work, and then the other shows, you know, at the end of Izzy's box, it's being celebrated by a council member who pushed really hard to get this in his district, and the community and Izzy's relatives, and yeah, so it's definitely a labor of love. And a couple people who are my partners in crime that couldn't be here. Gary Singh is a Metro News writer, and I kind of travel the world vicariously through Gary's Facebook posts because he posts all of these different things. And he traveled to Edmonton and saw these utility boxes and posted them on Facebook. And I said, why can't we do that here? And he's like, it will never happen in a wasteland like San Jose. And I said, that is a bet, Gary. That's a bet. And yeah, so. Yeah, here we are. And then Sherry Lakey, she's my artistic director, so she is a co-owner of Anno Domini, Phantom Galleries, and she's got an amazing pool of artists, wonderful ladies. So, so those are you know, two people who deserve a lot of. Yes, former arts.
Tell you that.
Yes. Yeah, well, she did, but there was a story that went along with that. Anyway, so on top is the photos that Gary posted. And then, you know, there's different cities, including Palo Alto, that has painted utility boxes. And I'm like, well, why can't we do San Jose? Next. So that was my question. And we've all seen them, you know. Ours get, you know, very colorful sometimes and just really, you know, yeah. Appealing paint. They're what?
They're often leaning.
Sometimes they're leaning, yeah. So this project was started as a Say It With Art piece, which sometimes can be difficult for some of the artists because they want to write on it. They want it, San Jose. No, we're not going to do that. This is a Say It With Art. And another tenet is we have to respect the owners of the box. So the boxes are owned by the Department of Transportation. And, you know, they're stakeholders. So maybe the box is in front of somebody's home. So it's very important that, you know, like I knock on the door and I say, hi, I'm from the Art Box Project. We're going to be painting this box. It will be beautiful, you know, and answer questions. And so it's really, you know, getting their buy-in. Local artists, they need to be paid. This is extremely important. Very often I get, well, you know, we could use high school kids and it'll be free. And my response is, artists deserve to be paid, and we want to send everybody a message that their art is important and it's worth being paid. So these artists are going to be paid. It's a very small amount, $200 for a big box, $250 for a big box plus a tall skinny one. It's not a lot of money, and artists have to supply their own material, but they're getting paid something. And then the community, they're the ones who pay them. So I marry up the community who wants a box done in a certain location, and Sherry, you know, gets the artist, and we, you know, marry those two up. And so community has skin in the game, and that's what I found is the key. Because what happens is once this box is done and we apply anti-graffiti coating, if anything happens to that box, the community is so upset that they're calling me screaming to get out there and fix it. So instead of just walking by and paying no attention to the graffiti or tagging, they have taken ownership of it. So I always insist that, you know, the community puts in some work. Now this is, sometimes it's difficult, like when the city wants to pay for something. Council members, sometimes they say, oh, I want to pay for the box. I say, well, where's the skin in the game? You know, they've got to show up with, you know, they've got to help me prep the box then. They've got to pay for sandpaper. The community has to provide something. And that sometimes is an interesting conversation. But anyway. Artists, adults and kids' bodies, and what I mean by that is a lot of times people say, well, why don't you just let the youth do it? And my response is there's a lot of youth programs already, and they're wonderful, and we should nurture those. And let's give adult painting, or adult artists who, you know, want to paint for some money, that opportunity. We celebrate, so I have a celebration every year. 3 years ago, we celebrated the first 8 boxes in a local restaurant, and then last not last year, the year before that, we started in the at the Luna Park Chalk Art Festival in downtown and did a bike ride, a bike tour of the boxes, so people were happy about that. And then last year, I put a community tree in Christmas in the Park, and it had ornaments of all the pictures of the different boxes.
How do you have Christmas in the park?
Pardon?
How do you have Christmas in the park?
Oh, it's a San Jose tradition.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got to come down. You got to take a field trip.
Snows. My grandson
Yeah,
loves it.
yeah. So it's
But you can call it Christmas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it happens
Because
during Christmas.
it's-
I mean, in the holiday season.
yeah, and but we also have, you know, a menorah. The baby Jesus always gets stolen. I don't know. I don't know if they also do Kwanzaa or not. But it started as Christmas in the park, and there has been some controversy. And you know what? Christmas is real, and so are the other celebrations. So why can't it be, you know, celebration for everybody, right? So anyway. So that's my little Christmas in the Park speech. Okay, and then going with the flow, because boy, I'll tell you, there's some ups and downs in this. It's really interesting. Yeah, so yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Here are some pictures. So this is of the bike ride, and you know they did a tour of. It took them about 2 hours. Great way to do exercise and also see art and celebrate it. I had an anniversary cake because we were technically celebrating our first anniversary. Next, please. So this is the process. Go ahead and click through just one more. Okay, one more. Okay. So basically, the process is Troy. He's the artist here. On the top left, he submitted. This is a sample of my work. I showed that to the community who wanted a box. They said, "Great, but we want him to do Alameda the Beautiful Way." That's on the bottom right, or bottom left, that's what he came up with. They said, great, paint it. This is a art box card with the box on it, and I just recently found out that because the Alameda the Beautiful Way is undergoing construction, they ripped out the box.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so now we've got, this is the second one I've lost. I'm like, are you serious? So when I said go with the flow, remember when I was saying that? Yeah. But anyway, but there's the happy artist. He's you know, he got to do his thing, and he's really happy about it. So, okay, thank you. So this one is also another one that got ripped out on the Alameda. It's only 2. But this was Trudy, and so she's painting here. After the box is painted, we apply anti-graffiti coating. Now, what I do is I go and I hit up council members, and I say, I want $500 from you. I want $500 to buy anti-graffiti coating, which costs $125 a gallon, and we'll coat 6 boxes. So give me money. And so they do, and it's great. And, you know, Pierluigi, boy, he's on fire. He gives me money hand over fist. Hey, you need some money? Yeah. Anyway, but it enables then for me to also kick in some, you know, something towards this, so the community just feels that partnership, even though, you know, this is a volunteer project. So Sherry and I, we spend about 20 hours per box, and this is free. It's, again, a labor of love. Here's some more of the boxes. The one on the middle, the eyes with the big mouth, that caused huge problems. Very urban art. People didn't like it. They didn't like the drips. That you really can't see, but that's just kind of an example. The one that says goal, it has letters on it. That was one of the first 8 that were done. Once 8 were done, I took it to the city and I said, look what we're doing, and isn't it beautiful? Will you give me permission? So then, and I said, oh, and by the way, the council members really like it. And they're like, oh, okay. And so we worked out a few details, and yeah, so they gave us permission. The lady with the gold hair, the artist's signature is the eyes are never filled in. So some of our taggers come in and they fill in the eyes for us, and then we have to erase that.
We're banana.
Yeah. Next, please. So these are the guidelines of the project. So and these are the exact same as the downtown doors. So and people are pretty good. People are pretty good about it. And then this is images of the artists and the community sponsors. It really is, you know, a celebration. People just really enjoy this. There's usually stories behind the boxes. So Izzy on the top, she's painting a box that has the Oliveira egg farm, a creek, a park, an orchard. So all of these were things that that box, which is in the Berryessa district, had around it. So that was what the community wanted to see. So
How long does it often take on an average for them to complete that?
it depends on the artist. So I've had somebody complete it like in an afternoon, and I've had one lady. She's almost going on a year.
Wow.
You know, yeah. And
How do you protect it while she's working on it like that?
well, I don't. So what I say is, the sooner that you get it done, the faster I can put anti-graffiti coating on it. And you know, if somebody says, "Oh, my box got tagged," I'm like, cover it with paint, do something with it, because I need a finished product before I can roll the coating. You know, and then we get into the discussion. Well, can't you just roll one panel at a time? No, I can't do that. So I mean, and to your question previously about environmentally friendly, these are chemicals, and they're pretty nasty chemicals. But the nice thing about it is it keeps the box nice. You don't have to use paint and other things to cover up tagging and graffiti. So there's a trade-off. Yeah. Okay, so next. Yeah, so there are, we have over 70 boxes done. I went over the celebrations that we've done. I've had about, well, that was in February of this year, about 45 incidents of vandalism since 2011. So just to do a comparison, one of the boxes that was in a high-tag area on Santa Clara Street, usually once a week it will get tagged, maybe, or, you know, something like that. And it has only been tagged, you know, like 3 times. There was somebody who kept doing an upside-down cross on the dog's forehead. But anyway, so it's very interesting what they come up with. But yeah, so it hasn't been tagged hardly at all in comparison with, you know, what usually happens on boxes. So I'm heartened that it's seen a reduction.
Is that because it's become more popular, or it's been more publicly exposed as a project, as a city project?
I think and just to correct you, it's not a city project. It's city approved. Yeah, but it's not city run, and so again, it's that stake in the ground that the people have ownership of it. But I think there's a perception that people don't want to mess with other people's art. You know, there's that respect for art, and you know, somebody's, you know, art. And usually I'll have people just ask me, I want to get involved in the program. I'm an artist, you know. I have had some graffiti artists doing boxes, you know, and that's fine. They just don't do the letters and the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Is there a similar submission and approval process as the other project?
No, so it's way more casual. I just go to the community. I say, you know, you wanted an artist who does kind of like this style. You were looking for this theme. Here are a few choices. They will vote, and then off you go. If it's not a community, if it's just an individual, because anybody can sponsor a box. You guys could sponsor a box. Anyone can sponsor one, and so then it's just the one-on-one with the person.
And then so the utilities of San Jose have given permission that
Yes.
any box could be painted,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that was there.
Yeah. At first, it was any old box could be painted, and don't touch the new ones. And then I kind of pushed on that over time, and now that they said, yeah, let's just go with all of them. And the city does require me to put a sticker on the box that says, it's the Art Box Project, here's the artist, here's the sponsor, here's my contact information, and then I also give Sherry's contact information. So, and this is just a little visual. I mean, it really has reduced blight. It's all about the community of artists and the community of sponsors. And we're on Facebook. My webpage is still under construction. I've really just, you know, it's funny because unlike most businesses, this isn't really a business, but unlike most endeavors, I did the product first. And I don't have business cards or a website yet. I will, but
Talking to another artist.
I'm trying to do, you know, trying to put the product out there. What questions can I answer for you?
Well, I was curious, so now I understand why the doors weren't yours the way this is yours, because this is a project that you really came up with yourself and started. So when you say that anyone could sponsor, so they would just have to know of the program and find a way to you. I mean, so whether via Facebook page or somebody
The
saying,
stickers that are on the box when they walk by.
and then your answer is, I need $200 or $250, and then,
Yeah, so I spend time, I walk them through the process, see if they're still interested. And then, yeah, we take it from there. I go look at the location of the box. Sometimes people want AT&T boxes or whatever. AT&T won't give us permission. I only do the city of San Jose, and then also the PG&E or the tall, skinny boxes, and I do those as well.
and so when you first did the first 8, you were effectively tagging them with art, right? I mean, and then you, like you said, you went and asked permission. So, I mean, that was great. I mean,
Well, yeah. So what I presented it more. Yeah, I was trying to present it as, look what we can do, and it's reducing, some of the problems, and the community can own this, and it won't require any city resources. And instead of, hey, I have this great idea, and then being told no, because my experience with the city of San Jose is a lot of times I hear no when it's really more just fear or unanswered questions. And so that was, just to show them the process and the way it was done, I was perfectly willing to go back and paint over those boxes, and I told the artists that, and they weren't happy, and I wasn't happy, but it didn't happen that way. Yeah.
and this is probably more of a question for our own staff and commissioners, but I have seen the utility boxes painted. There's the one directly across the street here, which has got the 4 different sides. So, anyone know the history of ours?
So there was a partnership with utilities, and this predates my time as well. But there was a call from the community, and a lot of those artists are youth artists, but it was a mix. And there were a number of boxes all identified at once. So I think the original was something like 15 boxes.
Yeah, all downtown.
And there is somewhere a map of all of them, but like Tina's experienced with the upgrades to the boxes that are housing
Signal lights.
electrical for signal lights as well as other utility items, they're replacing them with larger boxes, so we've lost a couple of them as well. And we have had some discussions within the city that at some point when they're all replaced, perhaps we look at reinitiating something like that, because those boxes really have fared very well, have not been tagged, and they've become kind of an interesting marker. Okay, turn left at the box with the sunflowers on it, or the windmills, or whatever. And so it's an easy way to insert public art into a congested area for a pretty low price point. But they've been around for a while. I don't recall what year. This is where we need Darlene.
Well, and different cities do have the program. I mean, yeah. So I didn't. This was not my idea. I just simply said, let's do it here, and like the city of Hayward has made. It's tied into their economic development. So they have a mural tour which includes utility boxes, and somehow they all land down in front of a restaurant in downtown, and let's have lunch, and so it's kind of interesting how that evolves. Yeah.
I just wanted to share with you that today I met someone who'd come to the area for the very first time for the Global Innovation Summit in San Jose this week, and who specifically mentioned the art boxes there and how that it was seeing them and the art in San Jose in general, but they specifically mentioned the art boxes was really an indicator to them of the value of art in the community there. And they were traveling out here from the Midwest, and it really struck them and to speak about what the community values and how wonderful they thought it was. And so I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. That's very nice. I appreciate hearing that.
All right, yeah, go ahead, Councilman.
So far be it from me to miss an opportunity to say this, and while I really appreciate the Art Box project, both there and here, I've said this before to this commission, it's like I'm hoping that this commission can find a way to better interface with our Public Works Department and with utilities and such, so that while these boxes create a palette for, or canvas, however you want to look at it, for art projects, wouldn't it be nice if these weren't such ugly boxes that just show up and get planted on our corners? And so to raise the bar for what the utilities and Public Works require and demand to have installed in our community.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, well, I sure appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Ben.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Tina.
thank you for coming and sharing your great work and supporting the artists in San Jose and the students. Yes, I meant to give that. I just didn't
I'd
reach
love to
Chris.
pass one
Yes,
out
no,
to
no, no,
everybody, but I
no.
just don't have
Join your Facebook site instead.
Okay, cool, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tina. All right, so we're moving on to our action items. I wasn't sure. Tina, do you need to get anything off the computer, or are we? Okay. She's good. All right. So the first item under the action is about the new media artwork. And so, Elise, this is yours.
Sure, I'm happy to update everybody on the where we are with the process as well. So the construction schedule is moving along. So of course, as we've reported before, we are rushing to sort of catch up with the art process. The construction documents are scheduled to go out to bid in the next month, and bids are expected to be due around the 1st of April. Ideally, a finalist would be identified somewhere in that time frame. So where we are with the process at this point is we launched a call for qualifications. They closed on February 10th. We had 104 applicants.
Pretty good.
So we're busily going through them and checking, because especially this happens on Cafe. You get a lot of artists who are not actually qualified for the projects who do apply. So we're going through and calling that list down. We are putting together a panel, which we almost have solidified, of really excellent people, to then select between 3 and 5 artists to create site-specific proposals for the City Hall project. So staff is working with Public Works to leave as many details open as long as we can, to ensure that we can incorporate the artwork successfully and be open to a number of different kinds of proposals depending on when we get those. So again, we are shooting for early April. And so staff recommends that the commission approve CIP funds for stipends for up to 5 artists in the amount of $1,000 each in order to create those site-specific proposals.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion from the commission? I think this is, it appears to me, something that we have done regularly now. I mean, just in the last year or so. I'm not sure prior to my role on the commission, which started just the beginning of last year, whether that was the stipends were typical. But I think it is a very nice way to get people paid. As Tina so eloquently said, artists frequently don't get paid. But I don't know if this is something that people have thoughts about kind of going forward, and what is the amount, and should it be standardized or not, and is new media versus other different or somehow. I'm just open to the conversation.
So this is above and beyond, am I on?
Yes.
Okay. This is above and beyond 25,000 that's already been approved?
Yes. This
It
would
doesn't
be
come
just,
out of that.
This would just be for the stipends separately.
And it's a good question you raised, Kathleen, regarding amount, and for us to think through that process-wise, you know, to sort of have that going forward, whether it's in thinking about it as a percentage of the overall kind of scope and cost of the project, or is it consistent across projects? I feel like our typical stipend is run around 500 typically on most recent projects. But what are
Not the stipend, but for maquettes, we usually end up giving a small stipend, but in this case, we're talking. The average for the maquettes are usually runs between 3 to 5, right?
3 to 5.
For maquettes. Mm-hmm. What
Well,
did we give the last time?
The last time we gave 700
Okay.
for artists for the University Avenue tunnels for final proposals. And that's pretty low. Generally, the standard is 1% of the budget cost, which would put us at 2,500 a proposal.
a larger scale
And
project?
this is a much more complicated project.
Yeah.
So $1,000 I feel like is actually very low, but it's enough to get the concept and have the artist spend enough time
To respond.
To respond and to be able to do an in-situ rendering to turn in to give everyone a real sense of what it would look like. Then we would likely break the budget down into and allow them to go into schematics and a lot of that research and development. So rather than having them do that up front for the maquette, they can get enough information to give us a sense of it. But for $1,000, we're not paying for enough of their time or materials to do something that involved. But it's enough on this time schedule to do what we need to have happen.
So can you say specifically again what since we don't have it in front of us, what specifically we're asking them to do for the stipend?
Well, generally what we ask for is an estimated budget. We want a rendering in situ, we want a statement, we do an interview of the artist during the selection panel. So similar to what we've done for university tunnels or any of those other kinds of projects.
A specific project proposal as opposed to their qualifications.
Right, as opposed to their past qualifications. So that gives us a real sense of what infrastructure they might need, where it is they're targeting, installing something. Are they planning to use monitors on that main wall, or are they doing sound installation or having something more sculptural? So from that point of view, then we can move forward with the architect to make sure that everyone's running in parallel.
It's integrated.
Right.
But Elise, this is a little bit different than a normal project. I don't use to define that as, because normally, you have a couple of commissioners involved to cull it, and then we select it, and in that process of selection. But this is being abbreviated because of time constraints, or just a different type of
Well,
project?
time constraints, but also Commissioner Toback is helping with the process because she's done a lot of research on new media artwork.
Okay.
And so she is helping us call down the list.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Miyagi is also on the selection panel.
Okay. So is there going to be
Is there a subcommittee formed, or we're not having?
No, remember, we're not doing subcommittees,
Project.
right, project-based subcommittees any longer.
So, in terms of talking about processes, and this time I'm speaking from the artist's heart. Trying to come up with a process of saying we're coming up with another rule or regulation among ourselves to say that we should have a specific amount of money allocated to these types of projects or stipend is probably kind of useless for artists because you don't know what the actual what the project's going to be, and like I say, an average of $300 to $500 before, based on that particular project. Now we're saying $700, and now we're talking $1,000. So we know that there are changes for the artists. We even getting just enough of the materials to get started with. And one of the things that I've learned since working with the commission and watching the other artists who have worked with us, who have been super patient with us, is that nothing ever goes right with the city and the way you get paid. So, or what I would like to say, Councilwoman, what I would like to say, maybe I should put it in a different method, different wording, that sometimes it takes longer. Things change that are outside the control of the artist, which means that sometimes we've had artists who have been finished with their projects for us, but we have not been able to pay them because it could have been, and I'm thinking in the terms of the successful one of the biker. It took us to that artist almost 3 years to actually see it up from the beginning to the start, not because he wasn't finished, but because we were having our own little technical problems with maybe we found out later that the city didn't own the rights to that little piece of property. We had to talk to the county about that particular project because it runs along a county park. Anyway, there were a lot of little technical things that we had not faced that actually put off reasons why this project couldn't get finished on time and why we didn't pay the artist. And in the case of the one that we have that is still here on the books, which I thought was off, where an artist still hasn't, we've allocated the funds, but the artist has not picked up the funds. But anyway, it usually takes us a long time to get the artist paid sometimes, and it doesn't move as smoothly as we want to, even though you're putting the processes to that, which is good, but the process to actually coming up with how you're going to grade or determine a stipend for a project should be taken on a case-by-case basis. That was a long way of saying that.
Should or should not?
It should, she says.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
So are those exceptions, or is that kind of not?
Most of those were exceptions, but.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, but in the case, we still have our projects, our earliest project, which would probably for the ones of us that started early with the Mitchell Park, we're discussing some of those changes tonight for another artist that's coming up. But things like that happen. Sometimes they're not our control, but it could be something that happened to the artist that makes the changes. So, anyway.
The one about the bikers a little.
Well,
I guess,
I don't recall that there was an issue with paying James Homer, but.
yeah, he
Let's go
didn't.
back and look
Yeah,
at
okay. Yeah. It wasn't an issue for him. It just took him 3 years, and he had finished the project in a year, thinking that everything is done. But it took him almost 3 years to get that piece up.
well, one thing I was going to say, just from a common standpoint, is I like the idea of using a benchmark, which is if a standard that's out there kind of in the world is kind of 1% of the construction cost, that feels like a good, kind of benchmark that you would
We're talking
use.
creative expression and art, so that's a total difference. Sometimes, we can say these things, but when you get too rigid, then you're going to have a lot of artists who don't want to participate.
And you've made your point about taking it case by case, and I think mine was going to be that new media tends to be digitally based, and actually it seems to me that if we're asking people to then create a two-dimensional rendering, that might be, because just like tonight when I brought on a stick, memory stick, whatever, jump drive, you can do things electronically that what you're really doing is paying that person's time or software or hardware or whatever it is. And so, I'm not sure that we might want to think about what we're asking for it to be delivered. And I don't know, if it's a standard that everybody would deliver a two-dimensional rendering, even if it is a new media piece, or they should actually give a little digital something. I don't know. I guess I'm just
Generally,
curious.
If you're asking for a three-dimensional maquette, in the case of, say, a sculptural item, people would generally pay more for that because it does take a lot of time and effort to create it.
The production cost.
So what we've done in the past is we've let artists know that a three-dimensional model is optional, but we definitely want to see at least a two-dimensional rendering of what the artwork would look like in situ. Because we know that our stipends have been fairly low and artists should get paid something. So it's trying to walk the line between the two.
And then likewise, I think you did say that we would have a maximum of 5 that you're trying to get to. So is that true? So really, you're looking for a $5,000 allocation in this
correct.
action.
And in the case of, for instance, University Avenue tunnels, of the 5 artists that were approached, only 3 ended up submitting maquettes. So sometimes you end up or submitting proposals, sorry. Sometimes you end up in a situation where the 5 artists you approach, 1 or 2 may be unavailable because they have other projects going on and they bow out, or they learn more and decide to bow out. So the likelihood that all 5 of the artists and all 5 of the stipends get used, I think, is fairly low, but we should budget for the 5 in case we get all 5.
Okay.
So can I make a motion? I'd like to move that we allocate up to $5,000 for the purposes of artist stipends for the City Hall new media artwork. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'm going to second it, but it was what you said just threw me off. Up to $5,000, or in including up to $1,000 per artist, so we can clarify what it's not one lump sum $5,000 per
Great.
artist.
Yes.
It threw me off for a minute, and then I was second that if that's going to be changed.
All right. So it sounds like
Just
we
a
have a motion and a second. So you caught up, Elise?
I'm in.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents? I don't believe so. Great, thank you. Okay, so we had mentioned earlier that we struck item number 3, and so we are now on to item number 4, which was something that Vice Chair and I put on the agenda, which was to talk a little bit about budget. Imagine that. No, that was the one that we struck.
We're getting some feedback here.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I just move it away further. So what we had been talking about, I guess if you reference your future projects, and with all respect to all of the years that have come prior to ours, Vice Chair and I have not been around beyond the last few months and or, almost a year for me actually today, but thanks, happy anniversary, right. So anyway, we were looking at that, and we all know that with the percent for art ordinance, one of the things that we had been talking about and thinking about was, and we've talked about at the commission level, was the master plan for art, and that if we actually have an infusion of cash over the course of, let's say, a year, that may be developers choosing to put money into a fund, that we would then be able to pool a number of funds and actually have a pretty, we think, a reasonable sum for some kind of art project. That we wanted to have not just kind of a random selection then, or how do we decide how it would, how those funds would be allocated, but rather we would have a guide, and that's this master plan, and that's what we've been talking about doing. And so obviously there is one in particular, I guess it's the Artist Reaching Communities, that has been out and allocated for a number of years, and every year has kind of gotten rolled over because there hasn't been the bandwidth, for example, to start in on something like that. And as I've come to learn, there's an artist in resident program at Cubberley. There are several of these, and part of the master plan, for example, would be to do a kind of inventory, if you will, of what does the city have currently and what do we need, and is it geographically spread in appropriate places? Is it not? Is it all of one media? Is it kind of spread that way? So there's lots of different ways of slicing what this would be, and I think one of the things we'd be really keen to see and do is potentially reallocate some of those funds, if not all, and that's up for discussion, towards something like starting in on that master plan process, because we all, I think, would like to see some strategy behind that. The other part of that would be thinking about some of these kind of community-based art projects that might want some funding. And so having a kind of more generic allocation in the budget that is able to fund things that, for example, if we wanted to do utility boxes or something of the sort, student programs, those were great examples from San Jose. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily want to take those on right away ourselves, but they're good examples of how to kind of get energy into the city. And I think following on the new mayor's address that she made, and she was talking about our Palo Alto and the idea of getting out into the community and the outreach, feels like it's the right time in 2014 as well to kind of reach out to the community and try to get re-engaged and energized and lead the community maybe in a different way. Maybe not very different, probably very similar now that I say it. But anyway, that was the nature of putting that budget allocation, and I guess I would ask Ben, do you have some other thoughts or comments you want to add?
Yes, and it's actually about the master plan. I think master planning for public art is essential now with the 1% for private development that's in place, and this gives us a roadmap going down the next 3 to 5 years of what you want the public art in Palo Alto to look like. And a public art master plan, from experience, takes up to a year or more to get it in place. So you have to have the community meetings, stakeholder meetings, and then for the consultant to go back and write the report, to come through the commission at least twice, maybe 3 times for approval, for fine-tuning, and finally to get it published. And one of the other things, I know in San Jose, the public art master plan is part of the general plan. I think here it's called a comprehensive plan. But to try to get that also incorporated into that, which then you have in the integration, and you have Parks and Rec that you want to consult with as well. All those different public works, those are all stakeholders in what the city is going to look like moving down the road. So the public art master plan, I think, is essential to what the commission wants to do. and gives us a roadmap of how we're going to look at things going down the road. So if we can reallocate some of this money into getting that master plan going, and I think it's essential to what the city needs, what the city going down the road. Like I said, 3 to 5 years, and maybe even longer, that we really need, because this 1% for private development is really going to be an infusion of cash into the public art fund. Yeah, and we need some plan. We can't just. We have to be proactive. We can't just react to things that are just coming down the road, because otherwise we're not going to have any cohesive plan. And you know, public art. Great cities have great public art.
Absolutely. In all fairness, I think that the city planning group did have a meeting about a year or two ago, because I attended it, and at that time they wanted to include us as part of the master plan or the comprehensive plan for the city of Palo Alto. So there is a starting work point somewhere over there. I think we just need to just pick it up from there. But you're right, we do need to have a plan. Most cities do have plans. Master plan for the public art, they do.
So I'm in full support of the planning process beginning. It begs the question, however, with a multi-year process of planning going on, is there a cessation of all projects?
No.
Right, there can't be.
Right.
So there has to be, before the plan is completed, also a continuation of discussion of what is the priority.
That's why you would probably want to work with the
art.
planners. Yes.
As we go along for the coming several years before the master plan is complete. So what we have had rolling for the last handful of years is this process of developing the municipal art plan and the updates to it that have happened every year. And it is through that work that the project of the artists reaching communities evolved from that, as did some of the other projects that are now in process. The University Avenue tunnels came out of that work, right? So the projects that are going right now have been a result of the planning process that the one we have thus far, which I agree is not as expansive or complete or as broadly looking or involving community input as the master planning process would be. And I think, with the Artists Reaching Communities, it has sat there and not been rolled out, not for anyone thinking it didn't have value, but because it involves more. One of the things has been that from the staff side, it involves more need for that. And so one of the things that even a number of months ago, when I was chairing the commission, this came up in one of our meetings with staff. We touched on there could be other ways to still roll out that program, such as allocating part of the funds that are allocated for it to actually for project management to manage the project. There are other ways that you can still realize that, and I think that especially since now many of us here were not part of the original approval of that it's worthy, before just firing it out of our list here, to revisit it. And I would be willing to present it next month. As it was proposed and voted on, there was quite a lot of work put into the proposal for what that would look like. And to your point of reaching communities, and that's a lot of what it was intended to do, is to have 3 different grants for artists who would be embedded in and working within communities to reflect back an aspect of that community and work with people in it. So I think it has a lot of merit, and I think it does a lot of the things which we all have said we value having here. Recognizing that no, it's not written up as part of, but nothing is written up as part of our master plan right now. The City Hall project's not written up as part of our master. We're all working from what we've done thus far to prioritize, and so that project it has been sitting on there, not because it hasn't been deemed worthy, is what I want to raise.
So I'm curious, I'm sorry, curious, how much are you asking for us to fund?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
So so just in the spirit of what Commissioner Usich would say, I think I would say it a bit differently. And I was on the subcommittee that spent quite a bit of time on that. I think that the project was a result of the fact that we didn't have a plan. And so what happened is projects, great projects, with legitimacy, support, good ideas, a lot of sweat behind it, effort and time and meetings and time. We took it as far as it could go. And the reality of the situation is that our staff resources are only what they are. And so, priorities have gotten made in the past without a plan by basically, what has to take priority, what's launching, what's, coming through from the city standpoint, what basically, is kind of, a reactionary priority setting as opposed to like any sort of forward plan. So I feel like it has the legitimacy of the world. It's just that it was a symptom of the fact that we didn't really have a plan in place. Yes, we had the municipal plan, but it wasn't sort of a very comprehensive, forward-looking, what we're talking about doing with the master art planning. I think that community outreach is certainly a priority, but I think no one at this table would disagree that master planning isn't more important than artists reaching communities from a budgetary standpoint. It's just that it was voted on, it like a lot of work went into it, staff was behind it, it wasn't just, and so it's just stayed there because the fact is we still think it's a very valid project. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, in answer to, I appreciate all of these comments, and I know nothing, by the way, of where it came from. I don't know who initiated it, so of course it's always the easiest for the ignorance is bliss, as they say, right? So I can happily just go reaching into pots of money. I think my greatest concern is that I try to think about action, and so in trying to get the master plan for art, because of exactly the limited resources of staff time, the sooner we can, I think, find an outside consultant to tackle that and work with us. And we know the first thing that we need is funds. So it is true that I looked at that without having a lot of understanding of what went behind it. So I would appreciate hearing further from Larissa and or Amanda, if you two were involved in it, about the background, because if it is 3 artists within the community, and you're right, the way it dovetails, we are here to kind of, as I think Ben said once, green light art projects. That's kind of what we want to do. And I don't think they should stop in this meantime while we don't know exactly if it's going to go here, there, or anywhere. Again, I'm just sort of inspired tonight by Tina and just the kind of can do, get it done kind of attitude, right? And I think that's exactly what the council is looking for us to do, is to just sort of be leaders in the area of art for the community, and that doesn't take staff time. So anyway, in answer to the question about how much, I was actually looking to reallocate the whole $50,000, and not necessarily to just the master art plan, but perhaps in 2 buckets. That one would be maybe the beginnings of a master art plan, because we know that, as Ben says, it's going to take more than a year. And so it'll roll over into another budget year, but then also thinking about some other resources that would be available for these kind of community programs. I think where I get stuck is that we still do have a balance of $29,000 for other projects that we can work on. So
that's the 34, you mean less the
less
5?
the 5 that we just approved. Thanks, yes, for clarifying, right? So in fact, and I know, what I don't know is the process for getting a master plan started, and how long a kind of procurement process is, and whether we could allocate that sooner. But I do think that an artist in resident program will be part of that comprehensive master plan. Or at the very least, it will be discussed. If the community thinks it sounds like not a great idea, if we all think that it doesn't sound like a great idea, it may not make it on the, and so But, you know, but these are all things that are just down the road for us, I guess.
And what was the dollar amount that you were thinking of with regard to master art planning allocation?
Well, it's certainly going to be, I think, I mean, you might have a better idea. To me, it would be in excess of $50,000 by the time you're said and done, hiring somebody and going through a year process and facilitating and using resources to just
What's
get.
the benchmark staff is expecting that it'll cost to do it?
25 a year for 2 years,
It's,
basically.
well,
or
or,
50.
yeah, it'll be $50,000 to do the master planning process.
I mean, even at, if you think about it,
And
I like, but at $100 an hour, you know, how many hours is it?
And
It goes
different
pretty
master
quickly.
planning processes, I know, for different cities incorporate different scopes of arts planning, right? So for us, and we talked about this briefly too, we're talking about specifically public art master plan.
Right.
Yes.
Not
Correct.
arts,
Yes.
not division of arts and
Thank you,
sciences,
right.
not
Yes, thank you for
involving,
clarifying, yeah.
You know, Art Center, Arts in Palo Alto, but specific to public art.
Yeah, and to that point, I just learned today that the Parks and Recreation Commission is doing a master plan, and I think you might have mentioned this previously too, Karen, but so, you know, as many times as you might have said it, I heard it and wrote it down and didn't hear it. But to me, I mean, oftentimes we cite art in parks because they're places for the community. They're also great artworks within a more urban setting, but equally, I think it's interesting to look at that. So they're doing their plan. I feel like we should do ours. There are other divisions within the city that are going to be doing theirs. And I do believe it will get rolled up into the comprehensive plan as it gets updated. And so it seems to me that it is the right time. But again, just bearing in mind that we do want to be action-oriented and get things done. So art is a very important part of that.
You know what, I just wanted to propose one idea, which is that we are planning to, I don't think we have a date yet set, but to do our annual
Retreat. Yes,
in
and
the
we were going to
coming
talk about that in the
month
calendar.
or so,
Yeah.
which is typically when that evaluation of goals for that coming year happens. And it seems like a really good topic for us is that, you know, I think there's agreement amongst everyone on the need for doing a master art plan. And then there's the money that needs to be allocated for that. And then outside of that, there's, okay, so what are the goals to be happening while this master art plan is going on? And I think that conversation and outcome of that then can formulate how you choose to spend money or reallocate funds out of projects or so forth.
Go ahead, Karen.
And, I'm going to repeat what I said once before, but since you brought up the Parks and Rec Commission, I don't think this group has had, I'm sure this group hasn't yet had a joint meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission. And it seems to me that it would be very appropriate to talk about, because you're right, art and parks. And I sound sometimes probably like a broken record on this, but functional art. You know, Parks and Rec Commission is, you know, one of their missions is to try to, not quote unquote mission formally, but one of their goals is to try to help direct people to and make people aware of where parks are, where bike paths are, and that sort of thing. So it's a perfect opportunity for functional art, and I would encourage you to talk with the chair of Parks and Rec, allowing this year, and set up a joint meeting to have those kinds of discussions, how you can work together and strengthen the art in Palo Alto for a variety of reasons.
And in fact, we did just talk about that earlier because part of, and again, when we get to the calendar, part of it is looking down for the whole year and what we'd like to accomplish. And the first thing that was kind of one of my priorities was Parks and Rec, as is ARB. And I think because of the ordinance that we have now for the % for art, that there's going to be that crossover a little bit more and kind of having an opportunity to talk with them.
I would also suggest, as I mentioned earlier too, about the % for art, Public Works and Utilities also have things that are kind of like add-ons at project sites, and I think, I can't say I know exactly what the best means of communication is about that, but having maybe, Elise can be some help in this, but you know, having communication and making sure that Public Works and Utilities are aware that there is you know, an emphasis on how projects, the delivery of projects and how they present themselves to the public, so that we don't just have like the box plumped down in front of a new building as as happens.
And you know, to let you know too that there is a document, even though it's a poorly constructed document, but there is a document that we started out with the idea that would be the prelude to, I guess, the master plan and doing planning when we started our municipal art plan. So it's a little not really comprehensive enough, but it is a working place that we started from. So you might want to look at that again.
Yeah, no, and I frequently have looked at that kind of, I guess I think of that as the priorities of what the commission wants to work on.
But that's how it started out, because we had nothing. And what I'm saying, though, is that you can use that, because you might end up reshaping that municipal art plan to be more usable.
Yeah.
Because right now it's not usable in some parts of it. But,
Every year it gets outdated.
yeah, and we keep calling it a living document, right?
Well,
Dying.
so it sounds to me, and I think this would be an appropriate action, is that we don't necessarily vote to allocate this evening, but rather we talk in our calendar section about setting up our retreat, and that we could do some of that discussion there in that and context, and then maybe even within that agenda, hear about the artists reaching communities, so that we have revisit sort of the other things that we have identified or want to do, that sort of thing, and then have a conversation about that, and then bring that back in the next month's agenda as appropriate. Does that seem like appropriate action? So
no action taken.
No action taken, exactly. Okay?
Okay, and I will take it upon myself to get examples of public art master plans in different communities. Okay, and
Been collecting.
okay, and a lot of them have executive summaries, so that's all you really need to read about the plans and see what's out there. And the consultant, you give them a framework of what you want, and they'll work within that to shape your master plan. So.
Staff has been collecting both master plans and also calls for master plans to look at how different calls have been done, what they're asking for. And so the idea was that in the retreat we could look at some of those and talk about what we would like the elements of our call to look like, what we want incorporated into the master plan, and just to get better acquainted with the process and what master plans look like.
Yeah, I've been involved in about 5 or 6 different master plans over the years, and I've chaired a couple of different master plan committees. So.
Oh, great.
Perfect.
I did just want to say, though, I really appreciate it being brought to the action of the commission, and I mean, I'm ready to hear my plans tonight. Maybe the letters. I don't want this to be a 6-month-long conversation about how we're going to launch master planning. I feel like we've been having this conversation for quite some time. So, you know, I don't know. Do we take action in retreats? I just, you know.
Not typically.
Not
right.
typically, because usually a retreat is off-site and there's no action taken. It's a working meeting.
Right.
So
I'm
fine to like look at master plans and pick apart what parts of but we want to master plan. So I just am applauding, and let's not.
And my thoughts are that you need to think, you're talking about master planning, and we need to just think a few months ahead where you're going to be having a practically different group of commissioners.
Well, exactly.
And this might be something that you might want to just wait, Amanda, a month or two.
talk some more about it.
A month or two, because otherwise then the thoughts and the language and even whatever you're talking about in terms of master planning might just change, because you will have a whole bunch of new commissioners. So that is just a thought to think about. Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't mean that since you roll off the commission doesn't mean you still can't be involved.
Pardon me?
Just as long if you roll off the commission doesn't mean you still can't be involved.
That's true.
And retreats are public meetings, so anybody can attend.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and also, I mean, to the point that it'll be outreach to the community, and we want community involvement in any master planning effort, I think.
They have to be.
Yeah. So, and appreciate Commissioner Ross, what you're saying about the action, and I'm rethinking the non-action, but I think we'll have to let it stand for right now because we have other things to get to, particularly the Magical Bridge Playground in the non-action section, and I think...
So I'll just introduce briefly Peter Jensen, who's here. So I may have to switch places for him if I'm on slide duties. So he is the landscape architect with the city of Palo Alto and has been taking the city lead on the Magical Bridge Playground. And I will just let him take it from here if someone can flip a mic for him.
Commissioners, good evening. Peter Jensen, landscape architect for the city of Palo Alto. I am also actually the lead of the parks master planning process, so that is my project actually. So
Nice.
I do. It would probably be good to come back perhaps next month and do a short presentation on that process and what that process is going to entail as far as the parks master planning goes. It doesn't now have anything specifically concerning art in the master plan. I think that it would be nice to add some elements in the master plan to start a reflecting if you do move and have a master plan for the arts thing, that is talking about that in there and how that should be done. So I'm sure we'll be talking about this a little bit more over the next year. I also think there's an opportunity too, because we do have quite a broad community outreach set up to incorporate some information about art or questions about art or adding questions about art to our community survey and things of that nature. So this would be a good time to start collecting some data, because it definitely dovetails very easily into the master planning of the art, and definitely art exists in parks, so there definitely will be something said about that, and how that needs to, or new art and is placed in parks and why and where and what's the plan of that, would be something that I think that would be very good to have. I think right now and in the past it was kind of placed. When you got a piece of art,
You're right.
found somewhere to put it, and
There's
it
some
got
green
placed,
space.
so.
Look, pour a concrete foundation. The good news is, Peter, when you're a presenter, you get to go first as opposed to wait till the end. So we'll put you on the agenda for next time. How about that?
All right. Tonight we're here, though, to talk about the Magical Bridge Playground. I'm going to do a quick kind of summary of what that project is, and then talk a little bit about the funding that we have to do a art in that as a part of the project itself. So without ado, the Magical Bridge Playground is actually a joint venture between the City of Palo Alto and the Friends of the Magical Bridge Playground, who are fundraising to construct the playground. It is a playground that will be built from all privately funded means. The city has set up a capital improvement fund for that project for $300,000 that focused on the design, permits, and then there's a $30,000 allotment within that $300,000 to have art basically as part of the Magical Bridge project. The Magical Bridge is going to be constructed in the rear of Mitchell Park. If you know Mitchell Park, there's this area in the back that was initially designed by the landscape Robert Royston, as an archery area. So that never really developed, and this portion of the park back there has just kind of let it be what it is. So it's some ivy and some trees, and there's not really a lot basically happening in that area. So this has been the designated area of basically that playground. We can go to the next slide. This is a schematic design basically of what that playground will look like. So the tennis court area that we were looking at there remains in that spot. The bridge that goes over Adobe Creek remains in the location. The pathway that exists there now basically runs along the same line, and then you can start the development of that playground basically in this area. It is intended to be universally accessible, so not only accessible by able-bodied children, but children that have limitations and disabilities ranging from physical to cognizant. And then that also spans a range of age as well. You can have adults that have a cognizant level of young children that they will be using the playground as well. Currently now, the playgrounds in Palo Alto meet ADA standards. That's just a standard you have to meet. It doesn't really set a high mark of or bar of what that actually means to be accessible and have the apparatus in the playground accessible to everyone. So this goes way above and beyond those features, and then has some specific design ideas and elements within the playground that make it more special and more accessible than other playgrounds do. Like I said, we have a $30,000 basically allotment to do art there. We can look at some of the images I think are next of this, so just to get another idea of what this is looking like. So this is the bridge over Adobe Creek basically here, and you can see kind of the playground happening here. One aspect of the project is that currently now the access to that bridge is not ADA accessible, so basically we are having to reform the landscape there to make the ramps happen. The playground itself does have a large playhouse structure. It has a mound, slide mound basically here that you access from this walkway, a large swinging area, tot lot area, which is ranged from 2 to 5 years old children to play with, in which you need that actually in a playground. That's a specific aspect that you need to have in a playground. A swinging zone, and then right behind the playground, and at least you can go to the next slide. This area right here, some existing trees sitting there. No vegetation or the existing trees are in these perspectives. They're mostly just to look at kind of how the design and the layout goes. So there's a lot more green that is involved here than what we're looking at. There's also a music zone that sits in this basic space right here, and you can go to the next one. And then this next slide is then looking back from the swing back towards the bridge and the playhouse. So that's basically what we're looking at as far as the design goes of the playground. The Friends have spent the last few years raising the $3.2 million to build this playground. Building a playground that is fully accessible is not a inexpensive endeavor. A few playgrounds, one in San Jose, one in San Francisco that have just been recently constructed in the same size range, are in the same price area, around $3.5 million. I think the San Francisco one was. So it is quite an endeavor that they have and task that they've chosen to take on. But over the last year, they've done a really, really great job in raising that funding and are very close to having the funding. So now that we're in this phase that the funding is close, the design is almost fully solidified, we basically want to start talking about the art piece for the playground itself. We're looking at hopefully starting construction in June on the playground. So the installation of the playground will take 3 to 4 months, and we're looking sometime in November to be completed with the project itself. This graphic then starts to explore some of the areas that the Friends and city staff believe they are good spaces to have an art piece, or however big or small that is, standalone or incorporated into some aspect of the playground itself. I'll kind of go through them in some type of standalone feature here, just as a entry piece, a gateway piece, to make that area special coming across the bridge. The tennis fence that's there is going to remain there. It's not the most attractive thing, so that would be something else that could lend itself to an art piece or pieces attached basically to the fencing. There is a concrete retaining wall that's here that's part of the inside of the playground itself that could be have a mural or something like that on it. And then actually this bottom piece right here, which is another entry courtyard. So there's actually 2 entries into the playground. There's one at the bridge and then one basically at this location. If you have not used this walkway before, it is a heavily used walkway, especially for the neighborhood and the kids going to school. So this will be, even though it's set back there farther, one of the main entries into the playground itself, because a lot of access will happen from this location over there.
Can you briefly run them through? I know Olinka and the Friends of the Magical Bridge Playground have really worked to make sure that there are so many creative elements incorporated into the playground as well. So I want to make sure that the commission isn't getting the impression that, everything's sort of, your regular play equipment that meets this new standard and the art's sort of a new thing. The whole playground itself has some really creative elements within it. I was certainly impressed.
Right. Especially the music zone element. A lot of those pieces are actually almost little pieces of art within themselves, created by a company that really specifically kind of focuses on making these aesthetically pleasing and functionally music pieces. We're also working with an artist who works with more of like a laser and breaking that laser to create sound. And bring kind of that experience into the playground itself as well. And of course, the playhouse structure is designed by Barbara Butler, who I would say her structures are more art than they are a playhouse. They are extremely beautiful, but also extremely durable and work well in the space. So I do think, like Elise said, that the playground itself is almost kind of a piece of art in itself and how it's put together, because it does have a lot of thought and detail basically into it that you don't really see in a lot of playgrounds themselves. But like I said before, the majority of the playground itself is privately funded. So the city is basically taking its allotment of $300,000 and taking a $30,000 chunk of that and basically dedicated that to some type of art, basically to be associated with the Magical Bridge Playground. So really, I'm here to open up the conversation of what we believe or good areas of that art could be and what the process should be to basically acquiring that. So if there's any questions or further discussions about that, I think we can start that.
Is that chain link fence on the tennis court?
Yeah. It's a 20-foot tall chain link fence, basically.
Well, you've seen San Jose Airport, what they did with chain link fence, right? A parking structure. That's that's one thought.
Well, they're right.
Yeah.
It's on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
It's true. Size-wise, it's
Right. No, well, thanks for bringing the overview, and we're excited about it kind of getting some energy again. I know Commissioner Collins, who's not here tonight, is already kind of identified or self-identified as someone who's interested in this project, so maybe you've talked to her or not, I'm not sure, but I think she'll be kind of a point of contact for you going forward. But I would open it to discussion. I will, I guess, start by saying I thank you for identifying, I think, 4 terrific locations. And if anything, I'm kind of intrigued by the fence because of the fact that it's probably, I mean, as you say, it's going to be a beautiful new playground. And so there's kind of one bad element, and that's sort of the backdrop. And I think it could really be enhanced. So that's my 2 cents for the moment. And I say go for it. Anybody else?
I have a thought. Thank you for showing this, and it's a nice follow-on to the presentation we received from the woman who's leading the fundraising. One thought that just crossed my mind is that, a recent other city art project that was done, and one of the reasons that I think it was very successful was its involvement of the community in the creating of the art that is for the space that they use, which is in Juana Briones. So the Percent for Art project of where the commission actually was for the artist to work with kids, in this situation, children who use the space to be participants in the creation of it. And right. I think, that type of work in formulating the creation of a space and in a new space has a lot of attributes and power to it that I would just throw that out there as one of the things to possibly consider for this space.
It's a great one.
I also love the notion of this park is like seems like a discovery. Like there's so many elements to discover, and so if that could sort of inform the art or inspire the art in some way, you know, that it's like there's some discovery aspect of it, and that can go in lots of different directions, but not to just be limited to something that's super obvious.
Thank you for the presentation. Who will pick where the art goes and what the art is? Is that going to be a process that the commission will recommend, or will the friends of the Magical Bridge choose that? I'm unclear on how
It's a
that's
city
to go for.
process, but likely the selection panel will be made up of representatives from Magical Bridge as well as the landscape architect and the commission. So
Okay.
we would build a selection panel similarly to how we do any other Percent for Art selection panel.
Okay.
And, you know, our initial thoughts on how the artist selection might run for this, because there are so many different types of artists who might be appropriate, and we are on the verge of launching our open call to create an artist pool. But because Magical Bridge is very unique in the audience it is serving, we feel like it may deserve its own separate call for artists who perhaps have done a similar type of project or more sensitive to those needs, and that they could, you know, provide previous work and perhaps a statement of interest, or if they have an initial concept. So that's where staff is thinking right now, that we may pull that call, how we may execute that. But certainly we're open for suggestions.
Well, one of the concerns I would have is, as Peter and you at least said, that there are so many artistic elements anyway within this playground that you don't want any art that goes in there to be lost or overshadow what's there already, to complement what's there. So that concrete wall, I think, in my mind, is out. That you want to make it excuse me, something that'd be integrated into the playground, but not be a focal point of that. So now that leaves either that chain link fence or the entry points, so the gateways. And I think those are the areas that to focus on, and maybe the entryways are the way to go, because that's outside the park, but then it adds to the park, and it doesn't detract to the park, it adds to what's already there.
And one of the interesting things, well, both of those gateways, because as you come around that path, you've got to turn a corner at those, as you're coming from this south and this bottom part of as you come up that path and you turn that corner, you don't know what to expect. In fact, they do have a couple of signs saying, beware of bicycles coming around the corner, and there's a mirror there. And so it is an opportunity to be that first image that people see. And the other thing is, when you're coming from the main part of Mitchell Park, you really don't see that corner readily. And so there is yet another opportunity to act as sort of a beacon to get people intrigued to come investigate and come see it. And we did have some discussions about having art integrated with the bridge. However, our understanding is that the bridge will be replaced pretty soon, so it didn't make sense to throw funds for artwork that will likely come down. So, so that's the reason the bridge was actually left out. But that is a rather aesthetically challenged approach to the park. So it could be a great opportunity for someone to do something interesting.
It would be interesting to see what artists come up with.
Exactly.
Whether they incorporate the chain link fence and the entry points as one element.
They may choose a few different elements to take on.
Right.
And I would just say, I mean, I guess personally from my aspect of, I would love art to be overly integrated into the whole design, so it was, you know, it felt like a piece of the design. I think in this, though, case, that the playground itself, because it has its own art piece, you know, in itself, that you can have, I think, kind of these standalone pieces of more of whatever sculptural-like pieces, whatever they did and however interactive they were, that could kind of denote that you had arrived at this location, that would, again, kind of celebrate that with with art. So I think that I think the entry points are good. I think that the fence is also an interesting point to look at, just because it is kind of a big blank backdrop that, you know, you could think of thousands of ways to start to like do things to it. So yeah.
I think to your point, the timing is always the worry, because you know the ship sort of sailed to integrate, and it's good because you don't want it integrated into that level. But also, if you're going to be done with construction really in November, I mean, and it takes us a while to kind of get out our calls and get our people back and do the selection, and then they have to come up with a proposal and so on. So, I think lickety split is the most important thing.
Right, which is why we're doing the call for the artist pool, because
Exactly.
then we'll be able to initiate a lot of those CIP projects that have been stalled and haven't been able to launch, so that we can get those done. But Magical Bridge is unique in a lot of ways. So our thinking is that we'll launch a specific call for that one.
So I don't think we have any actions per se. I think you were just looking for some feedback. Do you feel like you got anything here, Peter?
So yes, I guess then our next step is basically to send out the call, and then to start looking at the pieces of art, and then basically bring that back, and then form a committee to really look and decide what pieces we'd like to use out there. So
Exactly. Right.
So staff will get together and we'll start putting together the call and put together a selection panel, and we'll keep you updated.
All right, very good. Thank you for coming, and thanks for this great work.
yes, and I hope we get to talk more too about the master planning process.
Yeah, no, I think
So should I put you on the agenda?
we're
put me on the agenda.
we're serious. Yeah, exactly. March 20th.
We'll let you go first. Sorry. it's
Yeah.
so late.
No, it's
Yeah, sorry it was late. No, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks, Peter.
thanks. Okay, so on our other non-action item is subcommittee reports. And I know it's not terribly late, but given the somewhat late hour of our longish meeting, I would first ask if anyone had any prepared presentations from governance. I guess Larissa, Amanda, and Ben. I don't think, because of our transition, we haven't done that, so we're going to kind of take a pass on that, I think. Vicki Toback, Commissioner Toback, is not with us tonight, and she did prepare our innovation in public art, which was about new media, which is very timely given our call. And so, I was going to say, I guess I was thinking of passing, but let's quickly run through it just to kind of get people inspired, if that's... Oh, I'm sorry. If that's all right. And then, and outreach, I guess I was going to point out that I think that we're going to need some new blood on the subcommittee anyway, because poor Larissa, I think, is the only member at the moment because of my backing out, having to pick up governance. So anyway, so we'll probably need something. But were you prepared to present anything tonight?
No,
I don't want to expect that you were or weren't.
No.
Okay, so nothing on our... So, and I mean, I guess I could see us passing on innovation and doing it next month, as long as, I'm just trying to think, is the call... So you've got all the calls in. You already, I mean, their call is complete. You've got the submissions in. You're making the...
If everything goes swimmingly, then by the next meeting, we will be able to announce the finalists who are selected, who will be receiving a stipend, and who will be in the process of creating their proposals.
So there's a part of me that wants to roll the dice and say that that's going to happen, and then that would dovetail really nicely with this presentation. And because we actually, if you remember in Innovation, Vicki and I had thought about doing a calendar, and our calendar was not 100% complete. There were some holes. And so it seems to me it would be okay to skip this one presentation and do it next month, and then we could, and then we'd be on sync on the whole new media thing. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but are there any? She is likely to be here, I think, in April. But yeah, I don't know that she's available in March. Okay. I'm not sure yet. So anyway, you tell me.
Just have a quick point of clarification to make. In anticipation of this meeting, I put in a panicked email to Elise because I sit on the ad hoc CalAb tunnel, and what can we say? What, the subcommittee has not met. Yes, and what can we announce? And so basically, we can't do anything with CalAb right now based on staff resources. So I just wanted to, and I know it's late, and maybe it's not the appropriate time, and maybe this is a retreat conversation, but I would like everyone to pontificate on the launching of subcommittees, commissioner-driven or staff-driven, because it seems to me a little silly to form a subcommittee when, it's just a cart before the horse kind of situation if staff isn't prepared to start teaming with, especially when you do need like the staff interface and you don't want to be, cooking up your own thing outside of staff. So I'm just kind of wondering, because I'm happy to jump onto outreach, but I need to jump off of Cal Lab, which doesn't even seem to be a subcommittee anyway. So, and then, I missed the vote on the City Hall artwork. So I think that's when I missed that Vicki and Ben were involved, but that we're not having subcommittees for projects, but we have ad hoc subcommittee. I'm confused. Sorry.
My understanding was that ad hoc subcommittees were primarily for commissioner-initiated projects.
Okay.
Isn't that
Right,
so?
like the University Avenue tunnels, when it's a project that hasn't come out of a 1% project,
I see.
and it's something that hasn't gotten to a stage yet of going out to a call, but it's being investigated. Either somebody comes forth in the community, we say, okay, that's a great idea, now what? But it needs more,
More research and outreach.
right, and understanding of even what could a scope be. So my thought about the Cal Ave one, it's an interesting. It has been on, in the municipal arts plan as a priority for the last several years, and I think for a while it got tabled because there was a thought that the city might choose to do something with that tunnel. So, right, during the process of, something might happen to that tunnel, then we couldn't possibly pursue doing anything. The artwork was clearly getting destroyed and was needing something done with it, but we had to kind of hold off. And so then what kicked back that urgency of doing something with it was now having the clarity that the city is not. They're not doing anything with it. So now we have a tunnel that is poorly lit, that has an old mural on it that is chipping off and regularly gets kind of like gray squares put on it because of tagging or whatever, that is in dire need of new projects. Many of us out in the community have talked with people who seem keen on the idea of leading something like was done there before, where they partnered with people in the community to do work.
I see, my mistake. I because it's been in like the diaspora of the art commission, I thought it was coming through the city pipelines, and so that's my mistake.
So then my question is, and to your point, which is a really good one of. Because we've been there over the years of, we talked about another project like that tonight where, as commissioners are meeting about and sort of formulating concepts of something that maybe there isn't the reality around launching or so forth. But, and yet we heard from tonight someone who in her community is choosing to roll out art programs in the city, with the support of the city and supportive community, but doesn't utilize staff time to do that, right? So I guess, I don't know if, this is a specific question to CalAV for one, but also sort of a general question about, and to your point of ad hoc committees or, where that kind of goes, right? So with regards to CalAV, is it something that to investigate at this point? If the commission still deems it worthy, is it worthy of investigation? And does that matter or not? Not about is it needing staff time to investigate? No, probably.
Well, I guess I'm kind of viewing it as, we know we have the space, we know we want to get it done, but logistically and timing all has to be lined up with the city. So
With the city to do,
to be able to
do anything.
To manage it.
To do anything,
how,
yeah.
to block it up, people use it, logistically how it's going to be done. I feel like the call, the ideas about brainstorming, the ideas about concept or inspiration or artists, kind of, the fluffier part of the work. It's more like how is it going to get new lighting, and is
Right.
like is
The nuts and
CalAV,
bolts.
yeah, the nuts and bolts, yeah. So I guess I was just kind of, I was thinking of it more as like, you know, a municipal project, but then like, you know, it would be kind of driven like a 1% project. You know, it's like we have the space, we need to set up a call for artists, we need to come up with some type of budgetary. It wasn't like University Tunnels, which was like so speculative, and I guess driven through. I don't know though.
Well, and I've heard Ben suggest that in San Jose, the way you tackle some of these projects is kind of through different processes. And so whether they have the same process, if they're municipal, private, or otherwise, or they're different, that might be, again, a good subject for the retreat, I guess, around this just notion that it doesn't feel like there's a process per se that we're all really understanding very clearly. I think
absolutely, Kathleen, and it's interesting because not to bring it back, but I've lived through a project through community outreach, artists reaching communities. We spent a lot of time, like I explained, and basically it just couldn't get done because it was horribly labor intensive to manage, and we just didn't have that ability. So I'm just kind of wanting to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's all. And also utilize my time in the most effective way for the commission. So that's all.
Okay, so I'm trying to think. So let's see here.
I would, back to this, I would support talking about the new media stuff next month. I think we all have a copy also now of the projects. So what we could do is read more about the specific projects in here and come prepared to discuss as well, as far as relevancy to our communities. Or I was interested in knowing, but it wasn't information Vicki had because I had seen this more practical information about some of these projects of sort of budgets and the amounts of time. But unfortunately, that information isn't readily accessible.
It's harder to come by.
It's harder to come by.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think the other part I would just say about this that Amanda, you mentioned a little bit was, so one of the things I think we're hoping to do is just kind of standardize the agenda so that if you want to present on a subcommittee, you can, but you're not required to. So, but I think the clarification around what's the subcommittee and
the ad hoc ones.
Yeah, and and then and also is outreach ultimately maybe actually going to be a part of, let's say, the master plan, because that whole thing will be outreach. So it almost becomes something in and of itself. So with that, I think I'm going to table that innovation in public art presentation until next time. And then I think we could go to any announcements, and then we can talk about calendar and retreat. Any announcements?
No announcements. I have a calendar item.
Okay, so if there's anybody else had any announcements of any upcoming cool art events they wanted to share, city or otherwise. Okay, then for your calendar, you have something, Elise?
The new date for our joint meeting with council has been moved to April 7th. And so the chair and vice chair and I did meet with the mayor today to start discussing the focus of that presentation. I think the three of you have been through this before quite a few times. So the staff and the chair and vice chair will start working on skeletoning out an outline and collecting images. Of course, if you have any images from, let's see, the last joint meeting, it was November 2012. So if you have any good images from commission events showing people having a great time with public art or retreats or something like that, go ahead and send them to me because I'm going to start collecting them, and we'll get something out shortly, and then everyone can we can parcel out sections. People get 1 or 2 minutes to discuss different topics. So we are working on it. We were advised that because of how stacked the agenda is looking about then for council, we may get bumped, but we should just have it ready to roll anyway so that we're ready to go. Right. And it has to be done in advance because we've got to turn everything over to the clerk
early.
the week before and the whole 9 yards. So.
I will just point out for a minority of us, it's the Monday after spring break week. So a lot of us will might not be available that week prior for like any prep or, and just,
Right, and I think they have to have all of their materials in and published earlier than we do, so it
They
might
want
be
it
all
soo-
done.
Yeah, they want it sooner, so.
But that's a good
we'll
point.
plan to take care of it before that spring break week though, so I'm with you on that.
And the truth is there's lots to point to that has been accomplished since that November of 2012, and then there are lots of things in process. But I kind of feel like the majority of the time what we were thinking about was that we would want to kind of maybe even ask questions or facilitate a conversation around what we all want to do and kind of get their buy-in, if you will, at the council level, because I think the mayor said it really well today, which was we're going to look to you guys to be the leaders in the art community, you know, as the art commission, and so you tell us, as opposed to having us tell you, because otherwise you're going to get 9 different opinions of things that may or may not be grounded. And with all due respect, and I think that was a really great comment, because they have a lot that they're doing and that they regulate and talk about and so on, and so this would be exactly kind of our moment to shine. So that's kind of maybe turning it a little bit around slightly, because I think we're all going to be thrilled when we finally can see Mitchell Park and all of the real work that so many of you all did for the last few years, because that kind of stuff is just incredible, and that'll be not even something we can necessarily say is finished, because we won't have been in there yet probably by then. Anyway, so the last thing was on the retreat, I guess, was trying to get something calendared. I know we don't generally pull out our calendars and look, but I think I'm going to ask the staff to initiate a doodle poll, and so then we can actually each participate. So I would just ask that you kind of try to take a look at that and respond pretty quickly, so that we could maybe get this done before spring break, which would be even before our next meeting. Well, March 20th is our next meeting, so I would say that's after. It's after. It doesn't, yeah, so it's the week later.
They're kind of.
It rolls from the end of March
It
to
rolls,
the beginning
okay.
of April.
Right.
It's the last weekend of March bracketed with the first weekend of
Okay.
April.
But so I guess just somewhere between now and then would be, between
So-
now and March 20th would
So
be
I
great.
think what we're looking for is basically a half day, so we're looking for a 3-hour.
Oh, yeah, and I had written down the last time people were interested in a half-day Saturday. Is that, am I not remembering that correctly, or had it written it
The
down?
weekday option won
No,
out.
I think the weekday won out.
I think so too.
Oh, it did, okay, so I guess maybe I wrote it down or read it wrong, so either way, that's fine.
So Fridays, Friday morning, so
So
I'll
like
target a Friday and
Like
then
8:30 to 11:30, is
find a
that?
couple of others. Okay,
Okay,
all right.
great. Are there any other comments or questions or additions to our calendar? All right, with that, I will adjourn our meeting for tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Make a motion. Okay.
No motions needed.